My name's Gil Baumgarten, and I'm the president of Segment Wealth Management, and we are a RIA advisory firm in Houston, Texas. I'm a breakaway broker from the brokerage business, having spent several years at UBS and Smith Barney. This is a high net worth practice. We have wealthy individuals, and we do some institutional business, but generally it's high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. The majority of our assets are custodied at Schwab. We have a little bit of money at Fidelity and at Pershing, and that's one of the beauties of Adam Align. You can keep money at any custodian, and as long as you've marked a client as belonging to a particular group, no matter where they house their money, they're deemed to be part of that group. And if you create a transaction to purchase some AT&T or any other security, it is pretty much custodian agnostic, and it'll direct those trades to the proper custodian and drop those trades in the correct account number at that custodian. So if you're running many accounts that all look the same, and if you're doing those transactions manually, it's kind of easy to overlook one. Or if you're at multi-custodian, having assets at more than one brokerage house, it's also easy to forget, which client at which firm has which securities, and then having to go backtrack and correct that. That's what leads to errors. This system keeps track of all that for us. We run several model portfolios, generally equity oriented. We also run a bond sleeve as well. Our equity accounts are generally exchange traded fund ETFs. We also run a dividend yield equity model and an all energy equity model. We can create sleeves whereby 15% of the account, say, is the ETF model, 50% is the dividend model, and another percentage belongs to the energy sleeve. And when we create an energy transaction, it only sees the percentage in that account number that's allocable to that percentage that's set up in that account. The scalability is the biggest issue, and the reliance upon it to calculate things that we would otherwise spend time calculating and run the risk of human error impacting the way we did something or had to undo something later. Once you rely on a system that you've set up and it tends to calculate things automatically for you, it really makes the business run a lot more smoothly. All I have to stay focused on is the sleeve itself, and then all the transactions occur underneath the sleeve. It doesn't matter whether I'm doing these transactions for one account or 1,000 accounts. It's the exact same amount of effort when you have a system that calculates everything for you automatically, as compared to our manual way of allocating those trades. Therefore, the number of transactions, number of account numbers that you're dealing with is going to determine what your workload is. Our workload is not contingent on the size or number of account numbers that we're transacting this business for. Well, the more seamless that transaction can go off, the better the client execution is going to be. If you pause because of whatever, you didn't want to deal with it today, you were in a bind for time, you try to talk yourself out of doing that transaction. And then tomorrow the stock's up $1 and you get in a big hurry, you've already left money on the table that could have been transacted yesterday. So the more seamless that is, the better the client executions are going to be, and I think that attributes back to performance in the end for the client. And so I need a system that would allow me to sell one security in the middle of the day, rebuy another security at moments thereafter, and I already knew exactly how much cash I had to spend, as opposed to a system that thinks in terms of mutual funds, which is end of day transaction. So the seamless nature of having a thought, calculating a transaction, and causing that transaction to occur, the more simple and seamless that can be, the more fluid the whole business becomes, and the more my thoughts get turned into action in my client accounts, as opposed to me talking myself out of what I know I should be doing because it's going to take 30 minutes or an hour to execute something. Oh, heck, it'll be the same one way or another. I don't do that as often as I used to, and I think my client accounts perform better accordingly. Therefore, if you're making a buy transaction for 20,000 shares, you get average pricing so that every client ends up with part of the same transaction. You don't end up with multiple transactions at various prices, and then that causes account dispersion down the road. When one particular client executed a trade at $22, somebody else owns it at 22 1/8 because of some inefficiency in the way you were processing that trade. It just really makes the business much more streamlined and easier to manage. We can turn a thought into a transaction really within a matter of a minute or two, as opposed to calculating a transaction manually. We could spend an hour on that. multiply that times the number of times you do that over a year's time period, how many man hours are involved in that? So it certainly is a time saver, yes. I can see the day where we could operate this out of multiple offices. I could spend less time in the office. I could spend more time at my lake house. Nobody would even know where I was, and a system like this would allow me to log on, create those transactions basically out of thin air and apply them to my client account numbers. Pretty powerful things that we're working towards. We're not implementing that at this time. But on a local basis, I can set up the parameters as to who has access to the system, who has what password, tracking who did what on which transaction. So if an error occurs, I'll know who caused that error. I can set it up so that I'm the one that's in charge of everything. I can delegate that authority to other people, withdraw that authority. It's very flexible with regard to keeping track of who executed what trade and who had that authority. So yes, it's very, very flexible and secure. Many custodians even have programs in place to help advisors like me pay for this type of software because of how much more order flow they get out of it. So yes, everyone benefits from that.